Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money,
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
and this week's episode came a little quicker. We're gonna be both busy kind of with this upcoming weekend, with work and things like that. I know June's you're gonna be busy, so we are getting this out a little bit earlier than planned, which is totally fine. I am actually very excited to talk this week with you, and we're going to be diving into our very first of the franchise. I'm so excited. And if you couldn't tell by the shirt, we're going to be reviewing Friday the 13th. So, one of the largest staples, possibly, you could argue, to the horror genre with a franchise like this. We're going to be covering the original 1980 film, where it all began for this franchise. And, I think in the 80s, June's early, 70s and 80s, horror was just insane back then, wasn't it? Like with everything coming out, there wasn't as much now that you could do to produce a horror movie like you could back then. But, iconic films back then. And being in the 80s, this is, truly where, things really ramp up.
It's right around that time period because in the 40s and 50s, we had a lot of those Universal monster movies that were just rehashed over and over again to the point that audience members got numb to it. They just didn't care for the story anymore. The story was getting very lackluster for those movies. The 60s was kind of a lull period, but then we really saw the 70s, like you said, in
Mm-hmm.
the 80s, this
Yeah.
fruition of horror coming to the surface. People wanted to see this type of stuff, but directors weren't giving that freedom to exercise their creativity and their imagination for these types of films. And we really see them start coming into life in the 70s and 80s. Friday
Yeah.
the 13th is one of them. This franchise alone, I had never really dipped my toes in at all, other than being on AMC randomly during the fall. Oktoberfest, always my favorite time of season watching AMC. It would be on here and there. It would always just be bits and pieces. I never saw anything beyond that. So this was actually, I'll say, a genuine first reaction for me watching the original 1980 film from the franchise. So I'm really jazzed to jump into this, Money. I know we talked about making this one of our next episodes. I just knew that you really had a good mind when it came to slasher films. And Friday the 13th obviously is one of the biggest ones for that. So I really was excited to pick your brain, share my experiences that I had with the film. And yeah, I'm pumped to be here per usual, Money. It's a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing better than to dissect a slasher film. So it's not my first watch by any means, but it's been a damn while since I've seen the 1980 film. So it was refreshing to go back and look at it, and obviously uh scratch the surface with you. So excited and pumped. And before we get into anything else, make sure we are on YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, most mainstream media platforms. So make sure to give us a like, leave a thumbs up, things like that. Check us out. We are on all that, and I'm just excited to share this with you, Junes. It's always a fun time. So, but yeah, this again released in 1980. And I think there's 12 total films as of now, and it's been a while since a Friday the 13th has actually been released. I don't know, and I'd love to look into it if there'll be a reboot or resurrection of this.
It comes around every, couple decades. And I think maybe we're getting to that time. And like you said, it's been quite a while. I
Yeah,
barely even recall growing up them being out in theaters. So I think it's time to bring
yeah.
that back around.
If they nail it, man, they could. I mean, really make a good profit, I think.
Mhm.
But anyway, I'm glad we covered that. And yeah, like I said, it kind of opens with Camp Crystal Lake, the creepy music, the sound cues, and I love about this with the film is there's a lot of POV shots of either someone stalking, like if it's Jason. I don't know, a little side rant, but I love that. And yeah, basically, how do you want to get into the first act? Because really, I mean, I don't know if you want to count the first 5 or 10 minutes as the first act, but we do see a couple quick deaths. A group of counselors singing, having a good time. It's nighttime. And two of them, like I mentioned earlier, Barry and Claudette, sneak off, which is, again, in a lot of these 70s, 80s films, making out. They go upstairs, I think, in an attic or something. And yeah, Jason meets Barry, I think, to the stomach with a knife. And I think Claudette just like gets killed off screen. And we have a few of those throughout this. So, but yeah, quick opening. And then it's the title card. And I love the title card. Also, love the name. It's so unique. It skips actually to the present day now, which is June 13th and Friday, Friday the 13th. And we meet the girl kind of walking through an empty, bone dry town. And it turns out to be Annie, I believe. And she is looking for a ride. And like I said earlier, we meet kind of a group of, I like to call them the downtowners, these people downtown. We hear that reference here and there throughout the film. And they, they learn like, hey, she needs a ride to Camp Crystal Lake. They call it Camp Blood. That's what everybody's calling it with these downtowners. And it pans to Annie, who actually catches now a second ride, but we never see the driver. And it's weird, but like also just a front seat POV shot of her. She actually ends up boarding the car, just hopping out. So she is yet to get there. She's probably still could be 5, 6, 7, 8 miles out. She wasn't with that driver very long, but it was very suspicious. We never saw the driver. But Annie actually ends up dying in the forest shortly after this. And she gets her throat slit. And we assume, obviously, by Jason. And Junes, what do you think of? What were your thoughts, kind of just going through this, or were you just kind of going through the motions at this point? I know we have a few deaths, but
So far, first act solid. Don't love it. The cast is decent. The suspense is built just okay. Could be better, but I love
yeah,
the setting. The setting, I think,
yeah,
is the best part of Friday the 13th.
yeah. A lot of times, and you might do this too. When I watch these, I really try to put myself, you know, now it would be almost 45 years ago
Mm-hmm.
in that place. Maybe, hey, you go to a drive-through theater and you're watching this, like that'd be pretty fucking scary. Like,
Yes,
you know what I mean?
that's a great way of looking at it. The kills actually were pretty solid in the
Yeah,
first act. I
they
like the
were.
practical effects that we see. There's this usage of the makeup that they have on the neck with Annie's death that I think is similar in a few of the other deaths in the second half.
Mhm.
I just love how the first slice of the neck, nothing really pours out, but then there's that half second that goes by and then the blood slowly strips
Like
down the body. Those are
pulses in
good
it.
kills. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
good kills. And we always have that similar to Ringu without the black and white effect. There's still that almost freeze frame at the end where the helpless victim can't do anything as the knife is coming down or the axe is coming down. Those are
Yeah.
all, I think, well timed, and they give you that classic feel of a 70s 80s film.
Another funny character I think that we get introduced to is the crazy town guy Ralph, and he's hiding in their pantry, and they're like, they get scared, but like they're like hardly phased. He just like walks out. They're like, oh, that was just town crazy. Like they're used to it, and he just hops on his bike and pedals down the street. And he also is brought up later in the movie too, and he's saying like phrases how the place is cursed, the
Mm-hmm.
Camp Blood, everyone's saying that, but and basically telling them how they're all doomed. And a lot of foreshadowing. We see this in a lot of other movies where we have characters like this. Nobody listens, nobody wants to believe. The group is also now, trying to just hit major points throughout this movie. They basically, we see, I don't think they have power, which is actually a huge issue. Another big thing too, I think Jack and uh Marcy are out doing their thing, and the thing that gets brought up a lot too is the storm that's coming. It's going to rain like hell. So they basically go inside, and again, POV shots of this person watching everybody. You see that a lot throughout the film. We see actually a shot of Ned dead in the bunk bed above Jack and Marcy, and I don't think he was an off-screen kill as well,
Yep, definitely off screen
believe it or not.
because there was that scene prior where he saw a figure in one of these side cabins. He
Hmm.
went in to investigate to see what it was. That's pretty much all we ever got from that moment. Nothing beyond it until we see him lying dead in the bunk bed on the top bunk.
And I think she just basically goes to the bathroom and Jack's laying there. And this is my favorite kill, but Jack gets an arrow pierced from under the bed through his like perfect spot on the neck
Yeah,
too, like right in
right in the
between,
middle. Adam's
right in the
apple,
middle, but
baby.
like between the collarbone below the Adam's apple, like that soft spot. And he's dead, obviously, but probably my favorite kill. There's a second one, my second favorite coming up too that we see, but Jax was definitely good. I think that, when you think of kills in this movie, that's the one I think most people probably think of.
There's something about a young couple making love and then knowing that Ned is freaking dead on the top bunk of this bunk bed is just crazy to me. They had zero idea that entire time. And when the arrow goes through the throat, there's nothing he can do. And he can't even think. He can't even think for a second of what just happened. He's pretty much dead in that moment. You see the shock on his eyes. And we have, I believe, where did she end up going after that? I think Marcy went to one of the side cabins to go to the bathroom after they did the dirty.
Yeah, she I think again just tries to get freshened up. She tries to, get the water running. She hears some clattering and there's this shot of a curtain, like a stall or a shower. It was probably a shower or something, shower stall, and the curtain just barely like swaying, and you just feel someone was there or is there, and that's what I love because you don't know if they're behind there or if they're just moved along, like they're already watching her. She, doesn't think anything of it, and it kind of goes back and forth between this, and I think is this the one where it's like that freeze shot right before she dies, like in Ringu, I
Mm-hmm.
think. It's just she's screaming and like I think she gets killed. Is it by an axe? Is
Yes,
this the character that gets killed by an axe?
by an axe. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
take on the kill because before the axe comes down, she freezes in fright. She doesn't move, which is an interesting choice. And then we have an almost jolted jump to the next shot of the
Yeah.
axe literally in her face. So we never saw the axe coming down through
Right.
her. We just see the axe in her face. I don't know if that was because the practical effects were a little bit limited. So they just had I would say, attachment of the axe on her head before we actually see it. And then they cut to that scene.
Yep.
Definitely different, but it was a shocking moment because you didn't know, you didn't see the axe come down. All of a sudden, it's in her freaking face. So an effective kill for sure. And I mean, she was just so foolish, man. She was so oblivious to the fact that there's something there. And even when she thought she heard something, money, she did nothing about it, man. She's like,
No.
"Who's there? Who
Yeah.
is it?" I mean, she did nothing. So I'm not surprised that she died early.
And one thing too, I think we forgot to mention is this whole character of Steve Christie, because he's gone this whole time, and these people have died, and these events have occurred, and he's not even there. And we come back to him finally, and I think this is where our halfway point is, and I can talk about this too. We get a shot of him in the diner, and this is about the halfway point, I think, with the film. But he's been gone this whole time, and he finally is like on his way back. So I'm thinking like, hell yeah, this man's gonna return, maybe kick some ass, figure some questions out with the group, or just discover some of these deaths because no one has, no one's wondering where anyone's at, which kind of like pisses me off. But again, you're playing strip monopoly. I'm not gonna be focused on that. Everyone's kind of in love with one person or another, so I understand it. I completely understand it. But pretty good first half. I mean, I think it's been a little up and down, but we've got some deaths and things are really starting to ramp up. So this is where I think we should stop because I think it just gets more exciting after this for sure, in my opinion. So, yeah,
Let's fucking do it. Table talk, baby. One of my favorite things in the world. Money, I'll let you lead the way on this. We've got a fun one today.
yeah. I can certainly give you your list, but we will be doing a keep five and cut five. We each gave each other 10 movies, horror films prior, today as we're recording, but prior to starting the podcast of just 10 movies. And I got my list. He's got his list from me. I gave June's for his list, everybody listening. And June's, you can do this for me too. But the movies I gave June's are Jaws from 1975, Get Out from 2017, Nightmare on Elm Street 1984, The Cabin in the Woods 2011, Barbarian from 2022, Hereditary from 2018, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, The Witch, which we've covered on this podcast, 2015, The Autopsy of Jane Doe 2016, and Predator from 1987, which I fucking love. The Predator. We got to do an episode on that. But those are his 10 movies. So he's obviously got to keep five, cut five. So June's. I am excited. Did you have any obvious ones that you wanted to cut?
There's a few movies on here that for sure were automatic cuts for me. One of them was The Autopsy of Jane Doe. It's just okay. Yeah. So after that, Nightmare on Elm Street, you might hate on me for this. I typically, when I watch films, Money, if I have a hard time finishing the film, I think it is an indicator of the quality of the film. And I've had many of those, and Nightmare on Elm Street was one of them. And I got halfway through. It was okay, and I couldn't keep through with it. I couldn't finish it. So that's an automatic cut as well. After that, some of these get a little dicey. The ones I had to for sure keep: Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ooh. The original to me is fucking so good. It's so scary, man. The use of the flashing lights, the griminess of the location they're at. Leatherface himself is just so perfect in this film. I couldn't get enough of it. And then The Witch, we talked about. The Witch is such a good story. I thought the plot was awesome. The dialogue was so true to these people's actual ancestry, being from England. Everything was so on point. The idea of the witch itself was so unsettling, and the ending was so satisfying for me. And then another one, Get Out. It's the 21st century, I say, masterpiece for horror. It's a really creative story. It touches on a lot of, I would say, political issues at the time. Are you going to hate me here? I'm going Jaws on my cut list. This was a close one. This was a tough one.
Yep. I'm going to have the same thing. I mean, that's, people got to respect the opinion, I think. But yeah, I'm personally not, but I know there's going to be people that will probably be a little antsy with you.
It just, the iconic lines are, of course, there. I would say the creature design of the shark was spot on. The great white looked great. It really did. Iconic scenes, iconic lines of dialogue. It just wasn't really scary to me. It's one of those movies that, yes, it is a horror film, but how much of horror is it? It's just a little bit for me. It's not really up there with some of the true movies in the genre. This is another one, Money, that I struggled on the back half. I gotta say, it was a decent first half, but I just couldn't stay with it. I'm cutting Jaws, Money. I am cutting Jaws. I'm also cutting Cabin in the Woods. Creative nonetheless. I love the ending.
Yeah.
The ending's really cool. Great idea. Actually, some good scares. We kind of have a similar idea with Friday the 13th of a young group of women and men that are kind of flirtatious and getting together. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes in Cabin in the Woods, which makes it, I think, memorable, but it doesn't hold up for me ultimately. And then I'm going to also cut Barbarian. It's just not good enough. The ending was so weird to me.
That's one I for sure thought. I'm like, I don't think he's going to be on the fence. Yep. That and like Cabin in the Woods were the two. Barbarian, dude, it's just got a ton of mixed reviews. It's one of those films. It's like you either love it or you hate it.
The one other movie that I'm keeping, Money, the two other ones I should say, Predator, baby. We're in that AVP franchise. It doesn't get a whole lot better than the original Predator.
Right.
Predator 2 is okay, but the main Predator, it's iconic, man, and you can't hate on it whatsoever. I really thought that they had the Predator looking super badass, and the digital effects for that time were fucking impressive as hell. So
Yeah.
I'm keeping Predator. I'm also keeping Hereditary. This is one of those 21st century movies that really I think are going to stand the test of time. It's right there with Get Out. I think a lot of people are going to consider it highly for the next 2, 3 decades for their 21st century best horror films of all time. So I think that Hereditary plays on the idea perfectly of there being more of a rooted evil within a family ancestry and there being more of a ritual that is demonic that people have no idea about throughout the film. And once it's revealed to us at the end, it's so flooring and so shocking that it really is impactful and lasts in people's memories. That's why Hereditary, I think, is so highly regarded. But there's a lot of people that I think give it a little too much love. And I want to be able to remain a little bit, I would say, objective towards it and to try to have my own opinions without being swayed by the other critics' views. So that's my
Well,
list. It's a tough one. It's a tough
that's
one.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I wanted to try to overall ultimately have, come down to the wire a little bit with a couple movies where it's just on that fine line of whether keeping it or cutting it. So that was nice. I love that. But I don't know. There was a few obviously I knew you were gonna keep, but Jaws, I thought, man, for sure that'd
Would
be
make
one
it
of
up
them.
there. I
That was
know.
really the
I
true
know.
true
I
movie I
thought
thought.
about it. I thought about it, but I got to go with my heart money. And I got a big heart. So, all
I
right,
love that though. So
money, are you ready?
I am. I got them marked so I can go through them. So you want to read the list off that you gave me?
Yes, sir. So we are starting out from the top of my list on down. I've got the 2007 reboot of Halloween from Rob Zombie. I know this one has a special place in your heart, and that's why I want to fuck with you on this one. So after that, I have The Shining, obviously legendary, Evil
Yep.
Dead 2013. Following up with that, Evil Dead Rise. This one I thought
Yep.
might give you a tough time. After that, we have The Thing, just talked about it recently, goated in my opinion. Fear Street Part 2, I think the best in that trilogy. You might think differently. Midsummer, Florence Pugh, I love you. The Exorcist, the original. The Conjuring, and the last one from our boy M. Night Shyamalan, The Sixth Sense.
Let's see. How do I want to start this? So I will probably so immediately right away. The first one that I have to keep is Halloween 2007.
Oh, see, I
That
didn't know. I
dude
didn't know, money.
automatically. It's one of those I saw and I'm like, I have to keep that. That movie, it does have a special place in my heart. You have such a fucked up family, and it's a Rob Zombie film, which gets shit, but I freaking love that reboot of Halloween 2007. Just the events that take place. You see Michael as a little boy transitioning like 20 years later. He's all grown up in jail, breaking out. It's insane. I freaking love that movie. Um, Very cinematic. The deaths are insane. So, and I think so. One that I immediately to well, I'll do a couple cuts here. So, the first one, Midsummer. I've seen it once. I was just not a fan of it.
You didn't
Still don't.
jump on that bandwagon. I'm proud of you for not.
I still don't. I've seen it once, but I still like. I'd have to research it, but like, I still don't understand like the whole timeline and like storyline of the plot. Like, I just thought it was too much, too confusing.
They
I
jump
I was
around
just
a lot.
I was not a fan of it. And then my second immediate cut, just because I hadn't seen it, is Fear Street. Gonna get into it, believe me. Um, but again, there are some classic fucking films on here. So the other automatic keep the thing. Automatic.
You have to. It's
Keeping the
automatic.
I have to. I have to. So I got Halloween and the thing is kept and Midsummer and Fear Street Part 2 cut. So we got 2 and 2 right now. So I'm gonna kind of just go down the list a little bit. The next one that I am gonna keep for me, and this is my personal decision, do not hate me, but I have to keep The Conjuring. such, one of the highest rated movies I have on this podcast with you, and it's a staple to the poltergeist horror genre. It's one of those movies every time you think of demons or anything in that nature, The Conjuring or that franchise alone is in there for talk and conversation, no matter what. I don't even think it's close. Now, to go into that same subject, I am going to keep The Exorcist.
Ooh.
So you can kind of
Mhm.
see where my list is going to fall with some of these other
Ooh.
films. Dude, The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist Believer that recently came out, shit, you know, I don't think it was very well produced and, manufactured at the end of the day and brought to us in theaters. But The Exorcist, and I even asked you, I'm like, is this the like original one? And you're like, yeah, I think it's from 73 or 74. I can't
Yep.
remember. But dude, this is to me, this is really what started this whole genre, really, of supernatural demons, poltergeists, entities, you name it, anything in that category. I think this film is a staple to what holds it down still to this day.
You've got The Exorcist, Conjuring, Halloween 2007, and The Thing in your keep list.
Oh yeah, yep.
And in your cut, you have Fear Street Part 2 and Midsummer.
So I'm gonna leave my last keep unknown for a little bit. So the one that I am going to cut is Evil Dead 2013, the
I
first
liked
Evil
that
Dead.
one. I
I
liked that
did.
one, but it's not, it just isn't, it doesn't hold up to the other ones. It just doesn't.
Now, personally, I think that the Evil Dead Rise is better,
Okay.
and I believe it does have better ratings on Rotten Tomatoes too. I think it's an arg you can make the argument for which one's better any point in the day, but I'm going with Evil Dead Rise. I just recently watched it. I think it's a little bit better. I think it's got the edge on the original 2013 film. So The Sixth Sense. Now this one I would place below The Shining, and for that reason I'm cutting The Sixth
All right.
Sense.
All right.
Now, I think this is a film most people have seen, generally speaking, even non-horror uh, watchers, just for the actors in it, famous lines we always see. I think, there's even memes of like the little boy in the film too, like when he like, sees ghosts and shit. Like, I don't know. For me, with what you gave me, this I don't think is up there and can compete at the end of the day for me. So I am cutting that. I think I got one left for each, don't I?
Yep. One left for each.
So, I mean, obviously you'll know which one I'm either cutting or keeping based on this. So now this is a personal decision.
Ooh.
I am going to cut The Shining.
Oh my God, you son of a bitch.
Now that
Oh.
is this is all personal. I know the public would hate it. I know the public would hate it. Um, but I am keeping Evil Dead Rise.
Holy shit.
I know. It's if you want to compare it, but listen, hey, hey, anybody listening, don't shake your head right now cuz listen, this dude gave me The Shining classic, The Sixth Sense classic, The Thing insanely classic, the original Exorcist classic. I like what do you want me to do here? This was part of your list. Phenomenal list though, Junes, again. But anyway, that has been our table talk for this week's episode. That was so freaking fun. And getting back to Friday the 13th, our classic horror film here. I believe we left off with Steve Christie and his character returning now to Camp Crystal Lake. And we see that he gets a ride from a police officer, and he actually ends up getting another call. Pretty serious call. I can't exactly recall the call, but is dispatch getting to him. But he ends up getting in like his Jeep, or his car originally breaks down, and that's when he gets a ride. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll pick it up in the morning. Just get me back to the Camp Crystal Lake." And So we know now, again, like I was saying earlier, he's on his way back. Like this is a good sign to me watching as a viewer. Like hopefully he can bring the group together, figure some shit out. Following that, I believe kind of Bill and Alice, the couple, and like you said, Bill, that dude's got his head screwed on straight. I love his critical thinking, especially being in a horror film. A lot of these people don't have critical thinking.
Yep.
So um they go looking for the others, and they actually find the bloody axe that was used earlier, and that really sets the tone because now they're both basically on board. Like, what the hell is happening? Someone's out there, and they need to survive. And it goes back to the whole critical thinking, decision making. Following this, like something's obviously wrong here. You know, so.
Yeah, they hadn't heard from the other characters for some time. They didn't know where they were at. Alice
Mhm.
was definitely making plausible explanations to Bill that there might be something more going on here. Maybe we should just get out of here. And we don't have Brenda really around them the whole time once they're done with the Monopoly game that they were playing, and she has that off-screen death as well. So for Bill and Alice, they have zero idea of what's really truly going on around Camp Crystal. There's
Mhm.
something lurking throughout, and we have a lot of those POV shots. Even when we have Bill out by the generator trying to get it started up, he has an off-screen death as well. So there's this utilization of off-screen deaths that are impactful because they show up later on here and then the final moments of the movie, which is really cool because even though we don't see that kill, we are revealed to what it looked like and the brutality that came with it.
Yeah.
These scenes I would say are solid because we have the storm still going outside. It's hectic. You can't really hear anything. You can't see anything. And we had that scene there when Steve Christy gets that off-screen death as well. They're everywhere, off-screen death
Yeah.
left and right.
Yep.
When he shows up, he's got this person standing by the Camp Crystal sign with a flashlight, and the flashlight's basically blinding him. He can't even see who he is approaching. All we see is a moment of fear on Christie's face before he presumably succumbs to death. So the off-screen utilization is really effective, I think, because it does pay off the next 15, 20 minutes down the road in this film.
Good points though, Junes, because yeah, Steve does get killed. And this is the part where, like I mentioned earlier, Bill goes out to make sure they have plenty of gas for the generator. Alice, I think, just tries to get some sleep. She fucking sleeps, like wakes up shortly after. Bill's gone. I think she's like kind of confused, and then finds him pinned up on a door with like 3 or 4 arrows in him, which second favorite kill behind Jack, but that was damn well displayed in this film. At this point, we almost get introduced to Mrs. Voorhees, which is one of the most important characters in this. Um, and this is the point in the film, dude, that I am just going to nitpick the shit out of. Because, and you might agree, but before I get into that too, Alice is like boarding up the house. We see this very smart. She like ties a rope to a beam and then to the door handle. So if anyone tries to open it from the outside, it's going to be like insanely permanently locked. And then she just throws a bunch of shit in front of the door. She's closing the blinds. And then I can't remember which friend, but her friend gets thrown through the window, almost like a laughing joke in her face from we assume Jason, yet who we have yet to see. I forgot to throw that in there. We'll talk about that too, but I'll bring it up later. But we kind of get introduced to Mrs. Voorhees. She shows up in Steve's car and she thinks it's Steve, but it's not. And that makes me wonder too who actually killed Steve, if it was Mrs. Voorhees or Jason.
As the audience, we felt the same as Alice. We wanted to believe that Mrs. Voorhees was here to help us out. The more we have her on
Mm-hmm.
screen, the more we realize that she may not be a good person. There might be more going on to the story. Maybe she has something that she's hiding, and her dialogue becomes more and more sinister as she has open dialogue with Alice in the cabin. And once we know that she's actually a threat, we then end up with, I would say, very, very subpar choreography in terms of the fight scenes and the
Yeah.
defense scenes that we have. You said it really well. Just a bunch of bitch slapping. Alice hits her with, I don't know if it was a pan or what the hell it was, but it was a little disjarring to see. But I would say the actual kill on Miss Voorhees was satisfying. I thought it was fucking awesome. The
Yeah.
practical effects of the head just being completely separated from the neck was fantastic. You actually saw the head, getting freaking spurted into the air and dropping on the ground. I thought that was awesome. Miss Voorhees, it's an interesting character, and that's why there's so much of a debate towards the ending for me in terms of what does it actually mean. Is Miss Voorhees, was she the one doing the killings all the while, or was it Jason? Was it this spirit of Jason, the kid that drowned at that lake, or was it her the whole time? Because our third kill, I should say, with Annie, we see boots in the forest before she gets her throat slit. So when I see boots, I'm thinking that it seemed like a burly man, someone that's
Hmm.
bigger. I
Hmm.
don't know. It makes you wonder. And I also saw, I don't know if this was just a mistake on the director's end, but when the head got chopped off of Miss Voorhees, the hands of her body looked like a man's hands. I saw a lot of hair right here on the hand. So I don't know. Maybe that was just a mistake on their end. Maybe there's
Maybe.
significance. I don't know. But overall, the final fight scenes were very average. But the head decapitation was utterly fantastic. So I'll give them that.
Hmm. Yeah. Alice ends up getting away, and we see her wake up on a boat out in the middle of the lake, and then this cop car rolls up. You clearly see the cop shouting at her. She wakes up, kind of dips her hand in the lake. Everything's peaceful. She survived the night. She's alive. And one of the most famous, I think, scenes in the horror genre. Jason comes, reaches out of the boat, grabs her, pulls her in, and boom, splits to the hospital. It was all a dream. That was a dream. Now, the dialogue between the cops and Alice is interesting because basically what ends up happening is Alice is explaining, what about the boy? What happened to the boy? And the cops say, hey, there never was a boy. We don't know we never found a boy's body, but all of her friends are still dead. That part was actually true. So a lot of dots being connected here at the end.
I was a bit perplexed because I don't know a whole lot of Jason beyond the fact that he was a young boy that drowned.
Yeah.
And I will say that scene, her dream that she had, was really good. I wasn't expecting Jason to pop up like that by the canoe and the freaking rip her down in the water. He looked so mangled. His face was disturbing. I thought that was a really good shot. Super fucking disgusting. And that's a crazy ending to have. And I wanted to see a brighter day, but we don't really get a whole lot after that. We have a
Hmm.
nice little closing scene with just the lake water. It's kind of serene in a way.
So that's how the movie ends. We're gonna get into ratings now. We're gonna, wrap this up ourselves. So I'm excited. Rotten Tomatoes has an audience score of 60% even. So Dead Eye 60 and a critic score of 66%. So they're both, dude, critic and audience are both fairly, close, obviously.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I'm just very curious. So I can let you have the floor, Junes. And yeah, just give your overall thoughts.
For a first time viewer, I did like it. I didn't love it money by any means. I
Right.
do see it as a gateway drug to the rest of the franchise. I definitely am way more intrigued by the rest of it, especially the ending we have in this original one. It's got me
Hmm.
wondering what the hell is going on with this story. I want to know more. I love the setting that we have, the still shots of the lake, the use of the nature in the background in terms of the sounds. We've got the bullfrogs going. We've got the birds chirping. I love all of that. It puts us right in the setting with the characters. The kills, money. The kills are really satisfying, actually.
Hmm.
Even though we have those off screen kills, we get the body, the result of the killings at the end. So even though we didn't see it, we still get that satisfaction. The story itself has intrigue with Jason. I think it's something that keeps you, I would say, glued to the TV because you want to see how this ends. You want to see if there's more beyond this first film, and there is quite a bit. And with all that being said, money, I'm going a 5.8. It's not a 6 for me. I just can't in good conscience go above
Yeah.
a 6, but it's got enough to give it above a 5 for sure. It's iconic in its own right. And I ultimately recommend it to people. Can I say that for the rest of the films? I don't know. I'll have to watch them. But
Not
for this one,
not
I
all of them.
recommend to just give it a watch. Will you
Yeah.
love it? Probably not, but I think it's worth your time.
Your rating's very respectable. For me, the film also was okay. I think they could have had, you know, every death in this movie should have been on screen. I don't like the off screen. I know it's a trend for horror movies back then. And it's just kind of a staple that they do with those off screen deaths and those still shots that we've seen and reviewed in other movies. Um, and the other big thing too, like I said earlier, I wish for how substantial and important Mrs. Voorhees' character is in this franchise. I wish that she would have had her death was good, but everything leading up to that, I wish they could do that. They could have done anything, and I think it would would have been better because that really probably would have bumped my score up too. Um, I'm going 6-4 with this,
Ooh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it's a very respectable score. By no means would I put it above a 7. I think a right as a mid 6, 6-4, I think is a perfect spot for it. No shots here, but anything below a 6, I think is just a little smudge disrespectful. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm glad you were able to watch it, and I'm glad we were able to dissect this. Yeah, that wraps up Friday the 13th. Again, came out in 1980, but with all that being said, we've been scratching the surface. We love you guys, and we're out.